Good morning and greetings to everybody out there. This your girl Tiffany come through here live in effect. It is your girl Tiffany come through here live in effect. And today I want to get into the subject. Give me a moment. All right, so greetings everybody. Once again, it's your girl Tiffany come through here live in effect. And today I want to go into the subject about the last survivor or one of the last survivor of slavery. And her name is Redoshi. So now there was plenty of people. There was quite a few people that survived slavery around between the 1850s and the 1860s. All right, so they were brought here from places like Benin, some from Ghana, I believe, and just to name a few. All right, so they was brought on a ship called Cotita. All right, so Cotita was said to be one of the last ships that transported slaves here in America. Now, remind you, this was during the time that slavery was considered as illegal. All right. That's when slavery was supposed to be abolished and was supposed to be illegal, right? So there was slaves still being transported here into this country. Now, I have some sources that will back up the information. So I have some articles that I'm going to use, and I have some books that you guys can check into. But before I get started, please make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, share the channel, and all that great stuff, okay? So what I want to do is go ahead and get started. So one of the information I will go to according to history.com. So if you guys not familiar with history, there's National Geographic. So for those of you that grew up watching National Geographic, this is their website. All right, this is the History Channel website. So as we can walk through here, right, it says History Stories, the life of America's last slave ship survivor. So this was written back in April the 4th of 2019 by Becky Little. Redoshi was taken to America on the Cotilla, the last known slave ship. She lived until 1937. Now, before I get started, it's quite interesting to me when I hear people say, "Where is the slave ship?" As if we can actually go and point it directly and say, "Here it is." Well, in order to find the last slave ship, you will have to do excavation. Just because you cannot point directly where the slave ship is at does not mean that it did not exist. Peace to Brother Umi. How you doing? Just because you cannot directly point where the slave ship is at does not mean that it did not exist. Okay? You're talking a long time ago. All right? That's what you're talking about. You're talking about a slave ship that came by in 1860. So in order to really find the location per se, there's going to have to be excavation. So I can't stand when people say, "Well, where's the slave ships to prove that slavery exists?" That goes to show how simple-minded you are and you're not well studied. Because if you have to question that, then where are you getting your information from? And this goes for those who claim that slavery never existed. Slavery never existed. There was no slaves here in America. And I find that to be very, very, very extremely problematic on all levels. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So it says down here, like many African people forced into American slavery, Redoshi was only a child when slave traders chained her to their boat. Born in 1848 and kidnapped at age 12 in what is now Benin, she became a prisoner on the Clotilda, the last known slave ship to smuggle people into the United States. And as one scholar in the United Kingdom has discovered, she became the last known surviving member of that ship. Rodishi lived until 1937, a full 72 years after slavery abolition. So it said before scholar Hannah Durkin of Newcastle University identified Rodishi, the last known survivor of Clotilda was Alule Kosala, a man captured at age 19 in West Africa who lived until 1935 as Cujo Lewis. Both he and Rodishi were among the most, were among more than 100 African children, teenagers, and young adults who arrived in Alabama on the illegal slave ship in 1860, 1 year before the Civil War. See, keyword illegal. Why is that word illegal on there? Because slavery was abolished. It was abolished technically 1807, but people were still bringing folks from West Africa into the South. They were still doing it because at that time, slavery was a big commodity. It was not only a big commodity, but it was building up the economy within certain regions of what we call today as the United States. It was building up the economy. It was bringing revenue and income. So people didn't want to stop bringing slaves over here to this place called America. All right. Check this out. And so now this is a picture of her. Okay. She became Sally Smith. So slave traders forced the 12-year-old Rodishi to be the wife of an adult enslaved man who spoke a different language. The traders then told Rodishi and the man as a couple to Washington Smith, founder of Alabama's Bank of Selma. Later, Rodishi described this forced child marriage to the civil rights activist Amelia Bayton Robinson. So, according to that information, she was forced to marry an adult male who happened to be a slave. Now, she was 12 years old, forced into marriage. And we will learn that that was very common, that you had girls that was between the ages 12 15 that was forced into relationship, or they were forced to have children at those ages. Okay. So either they were being raped by the slave master to produce more slaves, or they were forced into relationship. And then sometimes, and oftentimes they decide on their own to be in a relationship with somebody. But in the case, the way things were, if you're under somebody's control, right, or if you're under someone that considers you as a property, you don't give consent to anything. So remember, by you being a property, you don't have the right to give no consent to do anything, whether it have sexual relationship or be in a relationship with somebody else, unless it was permissible. But other than that, you didn't give no consent because you was under the control of your master. You was the property. Now, it goes on to say, I was 12 years old, and he was a man from another tribe who had a family in Africa. Rodishi is quoted as saying in Barton's Robinson memoir, Bridge Across Jordan. I couldn't understand his talk, and he couldn't understand me. They put us on blocks together and sold us for man and wife. For nearly 5 years, Rodishi worked in the house and the fields of Smith's Bold Cheeto plantation in Dallas County. Smith also forced her to take a new name, Sally Smith. Rodishi conceived and gave birth to her daughter on the plantation. When emancipation came to all states on June 19th, 1865, Rodishi was only about 17 years old. And it says, with few options and no means to travel back home to her family in West Africa, she continued to live on the Bochito plantation with her daughter. She and other enslaved people later came to own around 6,000 acres of land on the plantation where she spent the rest of her life. Durkin found evidence of Rhodesia life in an incredible variety of sources. Barton Robinson memoir, Zora Neale Hurston published writings, and even a film. That film contained footage of Rhodesia is the only known footage of a female survivor of transatlantic slave trade. Durkin published her research on Rhodesia in the 2019 volume of Slavery and Abolition. So then it goes further down to say, the only other documents we have on African women's experience of transatlantic slavery are fleeting allusions that were typically recorded by slave owners. So it is incredible to be able to tell Rhodesia's life story. Durkin said in a Newcastle press release, rarely do we get to hear the story of an individual woman, let alone see what she looked like, how she dressed, and where she lived. Sivion A. Juoff, a visiting professor at Brown University Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice, says that Rhodesia's story is valuable in and of itself, but caution that we shouldn't be overly focused on which survivor was the last one. There were lots of very young people on the Cotilda, and some may have died even later than she, says Juoff, who is also author of Dreams of Africa in Alabama, the slave ship Cotilda, and the story of the last Africans brought to America. Now, I do have that book in handy. The importance is not whether she was the last one or Cujo was the last one. To have your story written about that is important. All right, so let's look at let's go into this information here. All right, so as you can see, now this is a journal that can be found on Taylor and Francis. It's called Slavery and Abolition, a journal of slave and post-slave studies. Now it says finding last middle passage survival Sally Rhodesia Smith on the page and screen. Hannah Durkin. So let's see how you can get access to this. Because some of these journals, so to get access, you'll have to pay $47. And then to purchase, you gotta pay $436 to purchase an issue. So yeah. And then to have the token to gain all full access is $450. So a lot of these journals, they be costing a lot of money. So it costs money to like go online and to download them or to actually get a copy. So yeah, but this is the website. It can be found on Slavery and Abolition. Okay. Now I wonder if they have the physical copy of that. Let me see. Hmm. No, they do not. Ooh, but this is something in. Mm. Well, this is something very interesting here. So although they don't have the book on about the abolition and slavery, we're gonna have to do a topic on this particular book here. I'm gonna have to do a topic on this book because this is very interesting. They have a book about the the Dutch Atlantic slavery, abolition, and emancipation, the colonial, studies, and the post-colonial horizons. So that's very interesting. Although this doesn't really have too much to do with the subject, but as you can see here, yeah, they have this book on file, and it's for $27.82. So that's very interesting. Just thought I would share that with you guys. So that's dealing with the Dutch people and their involvement in the Atlantic slave trade. So that's something that I would have to look into. But let's continue. So let's look up Bolton's Robinson memoir, Bridge Across Jordan. Okay. All right. All right. So you can also find this book called The Bridge Across Jordan, right? Which came out in January the 1st of 1991 by Amelia B. Robinson. And the book is 1536. So it's her memoir, but she speaks on doing an interview with um what's her name? She talks about the interview that she did with Rodishi. Okay. So all right, so yeah, that's her book right there. Bridges Across Jordan. Now, let's get on to the next source. So this source right here comes from Northern Illinois University, Husky Commons. All right, so it's a entry NR 489 Rodishi by Aaron Spencer Fogman, Robert Hansard. And let me show you guys. All right, so this is the article. As you can see, it says the catalog number 489, the name providing account Rodishi equals Sally Smith, and the account recorded 1932, first published 1932. So the last entry updated was September 21st, 2021. Okay, so it says the source is her reminiscence published in S.L. Flock, survivor of last slave cargo, lives on plantation near Selma. All right, so here it is. So it's a quote from page 13 of the book called Survival of Last Slave Cargo Ship, Lives on Plantation near Selma by S.L. Flock. Let me look that book up. Okay. Mhm. Okay, so I can't find the physical copy on here. But anyways. All right, so I was trying to find the actual physical copy of the book, but I'll have to go back and look into it. But anyhow, let me go ahead and read what they quoted on here. So, survivor of last slave cargo ship lives on plantation near Selma by S.L. Flock, advisor staff correspondent. So it says 72 years ago, a dark, supple princess of Takar's African Congo River Basin tribe lived peacefully with her husband in the heart of the dark continent. She was 25 years old, strong and healthy, and imbued with the love of life in the jungles. Today, this same princess, nearing the century mark in age, lives in a cabin on the Crows Plantation, 18 miles from Selma. Advanced age has not dulled the keen intelligence of her mind, and she graphically relates the incidents concerning her capture in Africa and journey to America in 1859 on what history concedes to have been the last shipload of slaves brought to this country. Aunt Sally Smith, as she is now known, speak not in the ordinary Southern Negro dialect but in broken English. The story of her life since coming to America is vouched for by a number of prominent and responsible people in and near Selma. Her own version, told in halting, broken phrases, confirms in every detail with historical facts. So it goes on to say, amid smiles and laughter, Aunt Sally drew a word picture of a Takar hut in the clearing of an African jungle in which she and her husband were sleeping one moonlight night. The princess awakened to tell her husband of a strange dream she had of sailing across a vast body of water for many days in a huge canoe with gigantic flapping wings. Scarcely she had finished describing the dream when the warlike Dahamenes, another Congo tribe, burst into the hut, killed her husband, and carried the princess off into captivity. In describing the Dahamenes, who evidently had betrayed their Tokar neighbors, Aunt Sally said, they bad people, no work, lay in sunshine at day and do devilment at night. For many days they come to Takar, tell him the hominies good friend. We till fields and believe bad folks. Then one day the hominy come and we let him in as a friend. They wet our guns so we can't no fight. Then when we all asleep, they come and take us. Our men fight. My husband killed, but we no can fight back because the hominy wet our guns. Sally paused in her story to describe the guns which were used in the fight. She said they were loaded by stuffing something down the barrel. The gun would shoot once and then would have to be loaded again. So after their capture by the Dahamenes, the Takars were started on the march towards the sea coast. History tells that the conquering Dahamenes marched their captives to the coast in a few days, and Aunt Sally says it was 4 days from the time she had the dream until they reached the water. So check this out. She said the Takar, Aunt Sally said, were ruled by a king called Alabama, and her husband was a nephew of this jungle ruler. Me no trash, she declared proudly. My father, he too Takars, what you call lawyer here. The captive Takars were tied by their wrists to stake inside of a stockade when they reached the coast. The big canoe that was to transport them to strange land rode at anchor within sight. Take us in little boats to big boats, the aged woman said. We climb up rope ladder to ship with the hominy. Some the hominy he get on ship too. They never see ship before, and big man on ships sail off with them too. So according to Aunt Sally, who is Rodishi basically said that the hominy people took her tribe of people, right, and sent them off to the European, gathered them up, and sent them off to the ship. But also, the Dahomey people end up being on the ship as well. Because see, if you go back to this information right here, what she said, take us in little boats to big boats. The aged woman said, we climb up the ladder to ship with the hominy. Some the hominy he get on ship too. They never see ship before, and big man on ship sail off with them too. So therefore, there was those the hominy tribes that was on the ships as well. So this goes back to the account that not only those who were slave traders, but they also end up becoming slaves too. So when we talk about being a descendant, we're not only descendant of those who were enslaved, but we're also a descendant of those who were slave traders and those who went from slave traders to becoming slaves themselves. Now, this is a lot of information, but let's go down a few more paragraphs. Thus were the betrayers of the Takars in turn betrayed by the white man. The hellhole in which the captive slaves were stuffed to make the voyage to America was graphically described by Aunt Sally. We locked in sissy, we locked in sisses and eights. The broken English poured from her throat, and we put in hold. Water there and dark, dark. Captain, he put glass to eye and look all day. When he see danger come, he drive us below, but we go on deck when danger gone. One of the girls, she sick. Then one night, man come with light. They roll her in cloth and walk up the ladder. Me follow. They drop her in the sea. They no tell us what do, but I know the dead. Bimby, man take car, he goes same way. All right, so basically what she's saying is when there's dead bodies that's found in the boat, what the slave masters would do or what the captains would do would go down into the area where there's the dead body, wrap them up and throw them over the sea. So once they throw the bodies over the sea, that's it. They do that every time to keep from having decomposed body and to keep it from smelling, obviously. Um, so she also said the name of the vessel on which the slaves were transported in 1859 was Cotelda, with Captain William Foster as master. History tells Aunt Sally cannot pronounce English syllables containing the double L followed by an I, and when asked the name of the vessel, Captain, she replies his name Wayam. So basically, she trying to say William, but she say Wayam, Wayam. That's how she says it. All right. So I mean, it's a lot more into this. As you can see, it says for 4 long months, the Cotelda sailed the ocean with its cargo of human freights. Up arrival in Mobile, the contraband were taken upriver and hidden about from place to place in the woods and swamp to avoid detection by a federal officer. In Mobile, Aunt Sally was herded with the other slaves up the river. Let her tell about it. And she says, they take us up river and hide us in dogwoods. Wagons come and move us about from place to place. At last, Mesto, which she basically saying Mister. So Mesto Washington Smith, he buy me and Uncle Billy, my husband in this place who died years ago. Me and Billy worked in the field sometime and around house sometime. We good, he good man. Nobody let anybody whip us. All right. So basically, one of the people that took her in, according to her account, he was very good to her. He was very patient with her. He didn't whip her or anything like that. But again, as we could see or as we could witness, that this journey that she took was pretty traumatic. and very traumatic for her to talk about. So, I mean, just coming from a land where you're familiar with your environment and you're familiar with the tribal language, and you come into another land that you have no idea about, and you have to become accustomed. So she could not afford to go back to her native land. She had to stay in America and stay on that plantation because she didn't have the money to go back. So I mean, again, there's more people who had survived slavery that told their stories. Um, all right, so you can also find this information on Wikipedia. Yeah, you can also find this information on Wikipedia. So what I'm gonna do is let's look up who was Amelia Bolton Robinson. So Amelia Bolton Robinson, right? Or Amelia Robinson was the one that did the interview with Rodishi. So let's look up her biography and her background. Okay. So let's look into that for a moment. All right, that's Amelia. Amelia Bolton Robinson. All right, so it says that she was an American activist who was a leader of the Alabama Civil Rights Movement in Selma, Alabama, or American Civil Rights Movement in Selma, Alabama, and a key figure in the 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches. So in 1984, she became founding vice president of Skiller Institute, affiliated with Lyndon LaRoche. She was awarded the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Medal in 1990. All right, so we look at her life. So she was born in Savannah, Georgia on August 18, 1911, to George and Anna Eliza Platts, both of whom were African American. She also had Cherokee and German ancestry. Church was central to Amelia and her non-symbolist upbringing. As a young girl, she became involved in campaign for women's suffrage. Her family encouraged the children to read. Amelia attended 2 years at Georgia State Industrial College for Colored Youth, which is now Savannah State University. She transferred to Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University, earning a degree in home economics in 1927. All right. So it says she also studied at Tennessee State, Virginia State, and Temple University. Now let's go down to where she. All right, so again, here's the book called Bridge Across Jordan. All right, so they did the interview with her on Eyes on the Prize, if you guys remember that show. So basically, here's her career in civil rights. So Platt taught in Georgia before starting with the United States Department of Agriculture in Selma at the home demonstration agent for Dallas County. All right. But yeah, that's a little bit of information about her. But it says that civil rights activist Amelia Bolton Robinson, Alabama, said in her 1979 memoir Bridges Across Jordan that she had met Aunt Sally in about 1936. Bolton Robinson later organized voter registration and other grassroots efforts there in the early 1960s, and said she noted that Smith had come from Africa and that they talked about her retention of African cultural tradition within her family. So historian Alston Fitz included a short biography of Rhodesia and Selma, a bicentennial which was based on Crow's family tradition and on the account in Robinson books. Okay. So as we can see right here, it also said that Rhodesia was filmed for a 1938 educational film, The Negro Farmer, Extension Worker for Better Farming and Better Living, made by the United States Department of Agriculture with assistance from Tuskegee Institute. The film was described as a paternalistic portrait of Black rural life intended to halt a mass migration to the urban north by Black people. Smith appeared briefly in the film but did not have any spoken lines. She is the second survivor of Clotilda and the only woman of the transatlantic slave trade to be filmed. The work is held by the Library of Congress in documenting racism African Americans in the United States Department of Agriculture documentaries. From 1921 to 42, J. Emmett Wynn describes the footage, saying that the silent portrait of Aunt Sally Smith, whose abbreviated biography is provided by a white narrator, underscores the poor living condition of Southern farmers in the Black Belt. It is part of an effort to promote agricultural improvements guided by the United States Department of Agriculture's guidance and to emphasize the film's message that Blacks should stay on Southern farms. Okay. All right, so let's go down here where it says Durkin noted the so Hannah Durkins, right? Noted the limited number of sources that refer to West African woman notes in a letter by Zora Neale Hurston to Langston Hughes, not published during her lifetime. A Montgomery, Alabama newspaper interview from 1932, a federal government educational film from 1938, in which she briefly appears, a brief account in the memoir of civil rights activists, and various data from the United States Census and other reports or records. They are fragmentary, frequently contradictory. The gaps and inconsistency across these materials help to underscore the inexpressibility of transatlantic slave trade as a lived experience. So it goes on to say, in 1928, Hurston had written to her friend Langston Hughes about her travel to Alabama and viewing African Americans. She said that Lewis was not the only survivor of the Clotilda. She also met a most delightful woman older than Cujo, about 200 miles upstate on the Tombigbee River. Hurston did not write further about Rhodesia, but she included the name Sally Smith in biographical details in an appendix of her manuscripts for what was posthumously published as Every Tongue Got to Confess, Negro Folk Tales from the Gulf States in 2001. It was based on the manuscripts and notes about 500 of her interviews. Hurston did not refer to Rhodesia in Barracoon, which concentrate on Kosala and his experiences. All right. So basically, Zora Neale Hurston did do an interview, got a chance to meet Rhodesia, but she never really wrote any information about her or put too much down as she did with Cujo Lewis. So a lot of the stuff that she had written went undocumented, basically. So now here's the books that you guys can check out for yourselves. All right. So the title of the book you guys can look into is called The Barracoon, the story of last black cargo. So the Barracoons basically come from the word barraca, which is the hut. So that's where the slaves would be placed in. They was placed inside the hut before they was sent off to different places. So basically, All right, so this book is by Zora. This book right here is by Zora Neale Hurston, The Barracoon, Black Cargo. All right. This was really the story about Cujo Lewis. So as you can see, Zora was an anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist. So she studied a lot into African American culture because that's what her expertise was. Now, also there's a book by Sivion Juoff. The title of this book is called Dreams of Africa and Alabama by Sivion Juoff. All right. So you guys can check that book out. That basically goes into the Cotilda ship and the surviving slaves from there. Then the last one I have to share is by John Harris. John Harris is The Last Slave Ship, New York, and the End of Middle Passage. Okay. All right. Now, I want to talk about the tribe which Sally Smith came from, which is the Takar tribe. Let me look up. All right, so hmm. All right, let me see. All right, so it's funny that her and Cujo Lewis come from the same tribe. They both come from the Tekars tribe. All right, so I think the Tekar people are part of the Yoruba tribe because according to the Wikipedia source, it says here that analyzing the other words attributed to Africa town founders, historian Sivion Juoff has concluded that he and most members of the African town community belong to the Yoruba people from the Bante region of Benin. Louis' father was Oduwale and his mother Fundolo. He had five full siblings and 12 half siblings through his father's other two wives. So it goes on to say interviewer Emma Landon Roche and Zora Neale Hurston, and those who use their work refer to Lewis and his fellow captors as Takars based on his account. Jewel believed that the term Takar might have come from a misunderstanding of the name of their local king or the name of their village. All right, so basically, what we know that what they call the Takar people, right? They came from a community of the Yoruba people, which came from the Bante area, which is like the western part of Benin. So so maybe it was a mispronunciation or misunderstanding or exactly what tribe he came from. But according to Sivian Juoff, they came from the tribe of those people that was from the Yoruba, right? Which is which those people were located in the Bante area, that is the western part of Benin. All right, so anyways, so I thank you guys for tuning in watching. So I hope you guys enjoy yourself. I hope y'all have a good one. And with that being said, peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. And I hope you all have a good day. So let me see if let me see if anybody put any commentaries on here because I don't. All right, so there's no commentaries. Okay, cool. All right, so again, shout out to the chat. Thank you, Big Umi. I mean, Brother Umi and Big Cree Money. Thank y'all for coming through. Shout out to y'all. So y'all have a good one. Y'all be safe. And until next time, peace and power elevation. I may come back on here later on to talk about a different subject matter. But other than that, y'all take it easy. Thank you. Peace.